So you build it, you run it, and some say you own it. Maybe you've heard this mantra before, maybe you haven't. I'm going to explain it to you. It's very common in DevOps and also lately more platform engineering. So first of all, where did this quote come from? If you were to look, this is where it came from. So there is this guy called Werner Vogels, and he's super famous in the AWS world. He speaks at reInvents. He also speaks at some of the smaller regional conferences around the world, the AWS summits. And way back in 2006, and he was actually working at Amazon then, in an interview with, I'm not sure if this is a magazine or website, he talked about Amazon and how they do things. He said the traditional model, you take your software to the wall between dev and ops, and you throw it over and you forget about it. But not at Amazon. Here, you build it, you run it. And really, he was also talking about doing this in order to shorten the customer feedback loops, although a lot of people have kind of forgotten about this. But I guess he was one of the people who was influential and with others helped to create the DevOps movement way back in the early 2000s. And as if to reiterate, what he was talking about was that there was this wall between developers and operations, albeit trying to achieve the same company goals, but really living in completely different worlds. Developers would make their software, throw it over the wall, and operations would deploy it. The whole idea of the DevOps movement is that this wall in the middle is supposed to disappear. Both are supposed to work more hand in hand, thanks in great part to automation, and it will help with the reacting more quickly to customer demands and being able to ship software faster. However, in my view, this hasn't really worked. What's happened is this operations person has had to upskill. They now use an IDE. They do things like Terraform, infrastructure as code, maybe Ansible, which is configuration as code. They're setting up CI/CD pipelines, which is really just automation of bash scripts, really. Everything plugs together more or less. There's a lot of glue involved, and no longer is this person called operations, but they're now called a DevOps engineer. And to me, that's the only difference, that the life of this person has changed. They've had to get all these extra skills. We did used to have also something else called a sysadmin or a system administrator or a system engineer, and a lot of people thought that this job would disappear. Actually, especially in big organizations, this job is still alive and kicking. There are still many of those jobs. In some parts of the world, there are more system engineers than there are DevOps engineers. So don't think that this job has completely disappeared, but they would also be part of ops in the past. So depending on the kind of company, ops has been replaced by a DevOps engineer, and in some respects there may still be a few system engineers around, or eliminated completely, or in other companies still going strong that never really embraced so-called DevOps and got DevOps engineers. Now, what about this wall? Has it disappeared? Actually, it hasn't. What I find in reality is that developers, they've done software engineering at university or college or whatever. They just want to code in Java or C++ or whatever it is. Maybe they switch languages and they love doing that. They're not interested in the infrastructure side. You know, they don't want to set up servers. They don't want to get involved in debugging ingress in the Kubernetes cluster. They're not really interested in DNS. They just want things to work. They just want to ship their software and not be concerned with how it's actually delivered. So even though we've got this mantra, you build it, you run it, you own it, in reality, developers don't do that. In reality, you hire someone called a DevOps engineer to do all of these things that developers don't want to do. To set up the automation, to do all the gluing between all the disparate systems that all have to work together in concert. And this wall, you know, it's maybe kind of reduced in size. You can kind of see through this wall a bit more, but these are still separate departments, developers and DevOps engineer. Sometimes you might have what's called an embedded DevOps engineer who sits more closely with the team. And I've seen this model many times, especially in larger companies where the teams can afford to do that. And sometimes this DevOps engineer over here, he's actually part of a different team. They might not be called DevOps engineering. They might call themselves, I don't know, cloud center of excellence or cloud consulting or something like that, and they'll be more responsible for centralized components, whereas this DevOps engineer is working for this team on whatever they're working on, whatever projects they're working on, and nothing else whatsoever. And often there will be a lot of chatter between this DevOps engineer and that one, and maybe the the developers here don't actually talk so much with these people here. That's one model I see quite a lot. So you build it, you run it, you own it. Is it really happening? In my opinion, not, but at least this model here is getting closer to it. With this person here, with, I guess, serving those developers, together as one team, they're better able to build, run, and own what they do. But if they don't have someone dedicated like that, then there is very much still a wall like this. Now let me show you how a lot of companies are now doing this in the modern day. Today what a lot of companies are doing is they're calling this department platform engineering, and they're saying, well, there's a wall here, right? And there's absolutely no problem in having this wall here. And we can even extend that a bit, as if just to show that silos are good. There's no problem having separate departments who work together well and can still achieve what Werner Vogels was talking about. You build it, you run it, you own it. However, there's a different model of achieving this. So today it works differently. You have, and I've seen this in scale-ups, not so much startups, they don't really have enough people to achieve this, but scale-ups and also larger companies who are being smart about this. You have a platform engineering department, you have developers, and the way that it works is platform engineering have the ultimate, I guess, jurisdiction over these centralized resources. They will build out clusters. They will maybe look after the most important private DNS, public DNS resources, something like that, servers and databases and Redis instances, cache, and all kinds of things. And what they do is they produce some consumable components. And this is what's known as a self-serve model. And what it allows developers to do, and these are in the forms of, it could be Terraform modules, or it could be even something like an IDP, which stands for an Independent Developer Platform. So it can be simple or it can be a bit more complex and granular, but it allows developers to say, we need DNS. It could be literally push a button here, and it will, with a parameter of maybe their preferred private DNS name, it will then go over and consume from the platform whatever they're looking to do. And it can be the same, for example, for ingress. We need ingress in the Kubernetes cluster. This is our host rule or our path rule, and we will set those parameters here that platform engineering have set up to be consumable. And when they do that, it will send an instruction to the automation over here to go and create that in the cluster for them. So developers can focus on their code. They don't have to learn all about cloud and all about Kubernetes and all about old school infrastructure. They don't have to really understand any of that except some of the basics that they need to allow them to consume it. And on the platform engineering side, they can focus on infrastructure. They don't need to know everything about how to code. They don't need to know how to do leak code and all this crazy stuff. They need to have some understanding of developer workflow and how developers work, but just enough, because the developers are actually the customers of platform engineering. So just enough that they can produce these consumable components that will, from their infrastructure here, give the developers exactly what they need. And this allows developers to build it, run it, and own it. They can build, own, and run not only their code, but also the infrastructure that pertains to their own projects, not the centralized infrastructure. Why would a developer ever build, run, and own a Kubernetes cluster? It makes no sense. They might own the ingress. They might build, run, and own the ingress components only for their project. They might build, run, and own only the node pools, the dedicated nodes that are dedicated for their own workloads. But they will never own the centralized control plane of the Kubernetes cluster, right? Why would they do that? That will be the purvey. That will be within the window of platform engineering. So this works way better, this model, platform engineering, for you build it, you run it, you own it. There is a delineation between what is owned by the devs and what is owned by the platform. To summarize, I would say that developers are responsible for their code, but also their workloads, and platform engineering is responsible for the centralized infrastructure and the consumable components that they are giving to their customers that allows them to consume out of that centralized infra. And we have a clear delineation of who owns what, who can build, run, and own their respective worlds. So that is platform engineering. I don't believe when Werner Vogels talked about it in 2006, they had you build it, you run it, you own it. I don't know if this is what they had achieved, but this is a more modern way of thinking. This is more modern platform engineering. I'd like to think that this is actually better than what they were doing at Amazon 20 years ago. I sure hope so, because tech has moved on, tech and working practices. And this is the reality, modern day 2025. You build it, you run it, and you own it. It's platform engineering. If your company is not doing platform engineering, they need to be. If they're not, then they're just pretending to do it. Then really they're just doing the whole developer and DevOps, and they still have that big wall there, and the software is still getting thrown over each side. They're not really doing it properly in my view. This is modern day platform engineering.